sleep though? Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There you go. There you go. All right, here we are. Finally, the day has come where I get to share my birth story. I'm so excited to tell this story because I really thought I was going to be telling a different story. I thought it was going to be a hospital birth at the end, but I got my home birth, and I'm so proud for advocating for myself and getting to where I got with the help that I had. There's going to be a lot of information in this video. A lot will be posted in the show notes at the end. So if I'm talking about sources or references or anything like that, it'll be in the show notes. Again, this is simply my story. I'm not suggesting anyone should take this route. I'm not suggesting anyone should, do the same things that I did. This is just me telling the story that I experienced based on the choices that I made. And in no way should this replace any kind of advice from your midwife or OB or doctor. This is storytelling, and yeah, it's really just an information tool. And during my pregnancy, I listened to so many podcasts and so many birth stories, like every day on my drive to work and back. That's what was playing in my car. At home when I was cooking and cleaning, that's what was in my headphones. And for 5 years before getting pregnant, I was doing pre-parenting work. If you follow my writing, you know what that's about. But I was doing a lot of that. So I was the most informed and educated and prepared that I've ever been for anything in my life, for this birth and for motherhood. So I'll just go over some things that I did during my pregnancy that I think are super important, before we get into the birth story. So I had pretty severe pregnancy emesis for 7 months. I was vomiting every day till at least like 6 months. I could keep food down, but I was super nauseous and at least sick once. Um, and it wasn't a morning sickness, like it was at nighttime, it was in the evening, it was on my drive home from work after a stressful day, and I have a pretty stressful job. And when I stopped working and really started focusing on myself and getting ready, like I think I stopped working at like 37 weeks, 36, 37 weeks. The nausea completely went away. It was a miracle, honestly. In hindsight, I probably should have gotten off work earlier based on how sick I was. My hemoglobin got really low, my iron got really low. And I was on diclectin for the nausea, and it helped, but it didn't fix the problem. Like some days it helped, some days it did absolutely nothing. But by month 8, 7, 8, and into 9, everything, like the nausea, vomiting was gone, and I felt absolutely amazing. So looking back, like how amazing I felt in those last few months really, really like made me forget how horrible I was for the first 7 months. I had a scleral hemorrhage, like a bunch of blood vessels ruptured in my eye. I looked horrifying from vomiting so much. So pregnancy was rough. I'll say difficult. Like being sick every day is not is not fun. But I did have a beautiful end of my pregnancy, and I'm really, really grateful for that. During my pregnancy, I did chiropractic care. I saw Dr. Katrina Greer at Oak Tree Clinic in Orleans, and she's Webster certified. And that's a technique used specifically for pregnant women. And I think I'm giving a lot of credit to that for the kind of birth that I had. A lot of people think that chiros are just like bone specialists, but they're really like nerve specialists. And the Webster technique really helps align your spine and your pelvis so that your brain and your lower body communicates efficiently, so that when it's go time, when your brain is telling your lower body to, thin and open up and loosen up and do all the things it has to do to get that baby down and out, that it's doing it efficiently and fast enough. And people who are completely out of alignment, their labor could be a lot longer. So I really give credit to my chiro for just getting that communication so like that communication pathway so open and clear between my brain and my uterus, my cervix, and just getting everything in order, because once labor started, my body knew exactly what to do and it was super fast. So we'll get to that later, but if you're pregnant and you're looking for some kind of like care to help facilitate your birth, I 100% recommend chiropractic care with a Webster certified provider. Not only did it help with pubic symphysis pain that I had, which is like a lot of pain in the like pubic bone at the front. I didn't have much back pain or lower back pain. It was really all in the front. And that the chiro helped a lot with that too, but it also just really prepared my whole lower body for birth. So definitely recommend that. I also was seeing a prenatal massage therapist at Anna Belanger and Associates in Beechwood in Ottawa. Her name is Namita Kerney, and she was really amazing. She just helped a lot with blood flow and getting energy to just flow throughout my body. Not much deep tissue, but a little bit based on aches and pains that I had. And she's just amazing. She has a very maternal vibe that I really loved. I sought that out in my care providers during my pregnancy. Again, if you follow my writing and my work, you know kind of a little bit where and what I come from, but I'm a huge advocate against passing down intergenerational wounds and trauma and abuse, and my childhood was pretty complex. So I don't have that relationship with my mom. I don't have that bond. So finding very maternal caregivers was super important for me, and I found that in my massage therapist. I felt like I was getting, taken care of by like a mom, and she's just amazing. And I'm seeing her in a week for postpartum massages, and I can't wait. So their information will be in the show notes as well. And then my doula, I'll wait till the end to just talk about my doula because I have so much to say when the birth actually happened and afterwards. But her name is Karine, and she's with Innate Doulas, and I'll put her company in the show notes as well. But stay tuned for more information on that beautiful soul because there's so much coming. All right, so let's dive in. This whole story kind of starts on December 2nd. It was my husband's work Christmas dinner, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be going because my due date was December 5th in my head. So I could have had the baby, I or not felt up for it, but we actually did go, and it was such a good night. The food was amazing. Everyone had a good time, just such a positive group of people to be around. People were taking bets on like when I'd have the baby, and everyone thought I was having a boy. We did not know the sex of the baby. It was a surprise we wanted to keep till the very end. Everyone thought I was having a boy. Like people there were just betting on dates and the sex of the baby, and it was boy. So that was really fun, and it was just a really awesome night. It was like super relaxing. It was nice to be out of the house. And we went home that night. We wanted to go get gelato because there's this magical gelato in Ottawa. You can look it up on Google. There's actual news articles about this gelato. It's at Stella Luna Cafe. They make a gelato that apparently is labor inducing. So it's like a mix of Mayan chocolate and chili peppers, cinnamon, and all the magic stuff. And it's a cold gelato, obviously, but it's hot and spicy. And apparently it sends women into labor or breaks their water. So we were teasing about it, but really at the end of the day, like you can't induce labor. I don't think. I don't believe that. Like your body and your baby will come when they're ready, will go when they're ready. Like labor will happen on its own time. You can do things that'll help thin your cervix and get your cervix nice and, soft for that birth and help your body get ready for birth, but I don't think you can actually induce unless you have a medical induction. That's my belief. So all these like spicy foods and dates and, having intercourse because there's a lot of prostaglandins in the semen, which helps thin the cervix. All those little tricks are really just to help your body prepare for when labor actually starts, but that's going to start on their own, on its own. So that's what I believe. So we were joking around about the gelato because obviously I didn't think it would start labor. But I mean, let's just try it, right? Like we're downtown, let's get it. But we left that dinner too late and it was closed. So the next day we're like, oh, we'll go downtown for lunch and we'll have that little gelato and come home. And there was a big snowstorm on the way. So on December 3rd, the next morning, um, we like slept in and we're getting ready to go downtown. And my doula messages me and says, oh my God, there's a snowstorm. And I'm getting a bunch of messages from like mom friends saying snowstorm on the way. Snowstorms bring babies, like your water might break or you might go into labor. And everyone's super excited. Um, so we go downtown and we have this gelato. And again, it was just a really nice day. And it was just kind of like the same vibe as the dinner the night before. I was so relaxed and just happy and enjoying life. We were on the phone with my mother-in-law while we were at the cafe, and it was just very relaxing and just a super chill experience. And it was starting to snow, and yeah, just the place I was in was super zen, which was really, really nice. Um, Later that evening, we had supper, which was like Mexican food. And it was spicy, so maybe that played a factor. I had my husband give me a foot massage and I was showing him like pictures of like all the acupressure points like on my foot to help with like labor. But again, I'm thinking like this stuff doesn't work. Like it's just all, old wives' tales type of thing. And I got tired, like hit by a truck tired. I lay down on the couch and I slept really snuggled in with my dog. And my dog doesn't snuggle me that way normally. She was just like all up in my neck, like super snuggly. And I had the deepest nap to the point where I woke up and I'm like, I have to go to bed. Like I'm so tired that I went upstairs, went to take a nap, and I probably slept for a solid 4 hours. And when I got up, it was like 10 p.m. Came back down and just telling my husband like how tired I was, but how I felt so good after that nap and sitting on the couch. And then at 10:30, I go to get up from the couch and I feel a gush. And I'm like, oh my God, Ryan, my water. And he's like, are you serious? And I get up and I just had the urge to like pull my pants down because it was like a tsunami, like, floodgates opened, not a trickle like some people describe, like a full-on mess. And I'm trying to like penguin walk to the bathroom and I stop between the living room and the bathroom and I just let it happen. Like at this point, I can't do anything and it's just flooding. And I'm hysterically laughing. I'm dying of laughter. I'm crying. I'm so like I'm just bent in half laughing. And so my husband starts to laugh, and we're just there standing in a puddle of amniotic fluid, dying of laughter at 10:30 p.m. at night. And so I had done laundry that evening and put a bunch of towels on the table. So I'm like, get some towels. And he comes back with a little bit of paper towel. So that just makes me laugh even more. I'm dying. Like I can't. This paper towel, like I could blow my nose with it. There's a puddle on the floor. So we're just laughing, full of adrenaline, and I'm like, "Oh my God, we're having a baby tonight." And then I realize that it's 10:30 p.m. on the 3rd, which means this baby's coming on the 4th, which is his mom's birthday. And we were so excited. It was going to be so special for our child and my husband's mom to share a birthday. Shout out to my mother-in-law. I have an amazing mother-in-law. I know it's not the case for everyone, but I really won the lottery with my in-laws. So we were just so excited. Now I had to let my team know that my water broke first, which is what I thought was going to happen. And the snowstorm actually started around 10 p.m. So when I woke up, it was like definitely barometric pressure drop, temperature changed, like a lot of snow, a lot of wind, and 30 minutes later, just membranes ruptured. So I text my doula and she's like, I knew it. Like I knew it was going to happen tonight. And I paged the midwife on call. And so the way it works at the clinic where I went, there's a team of 3 midwives. You have a primary midwife and 2 backup ones. Because of scheduling conflicts with my shift work and my primary midwife's work, I actually saw her the least. So I saw my backup midwives a lot more than my primary. There was one specific midwife that they were all great, but there was one that I don't know, again, that maternal vibe that I sought out from my providers, and just the way she made me feel and how I felt so safe in her care, or like sitting with her in her office. When we left meeting, like the first meeting with her, I told my husband, like, that's the midwife that I want in my birth. Like, that's who's going to be there when I give birth. And he was like, really? Like, I thought it would, like, you would have wanted more like this type of person or that type of person. And I was like, nope, this is the one that I want. And so I paged the team and I'm waiting for the call back to see who's on call. And of course, it's the midwife that I wanted. So she says, she's asking me a bunch of questions, and the fluid was cleared, no meconium in the, like, no baby poop in the fluid, no smell, everything was fine. I had no contractions at that point. There was nothing happening other than my water had ruptured. So she's like, okay, go to bed, get some rest, because you're gonna need that energy, first time mom, like, it can be a very long labor, and well, you're likely gonna have this baby tomorrow, so like make sure you get some sleep tonight. And same thing my doula told me, like, get some rest. So I just had my husband inflate the birth pool because I felt like once labor would start, it would go really fast, because the hypnobirthing course that I did, the affirmations and all the meditations I did during my pregnancy, the visualizations I did, the tricks that I had to, speed things up, the chiro work I had been doing with Dr. Greer to really get like the communication clear between my brain and my lower body. I just had done everything I could to get my body as ready as possible and get my mindset just in prime shape for this to go down smooth and fast, that I felt in my body that, like, when it starts, it's gonna go. So like, inflate the birth pool so we have it, because I really want it to be in water. And while he's doing that, I'm upstairs in my bedroom in the dark on my gym ball, just rocking around, and I'm getting some cramps. So I start to time some contractions, but very sporadic, not regular at all. They're all over the place. They're not short at all. They're like, um, I mean, they're not close together at all. They're like 5 minutes apart. Some are 10 minutes apart. Some were 20 minutes apart. My app even stopped tracking them at one point because it just didn't really count. So my husband was really high on adrenaline and excited too, so he didn't sleep much. And the sun started to rise and I got discouraged because I was like, wow, like, I spent all night on this ball, like, timing inconsistent contractions, and nothing happened. And I haven't slept. So like, I jumped in bed at the sight of sunrise, because also it was so bright and white outside from the snowstorm. I knew that that was gonna like stop my progress, just seeing all the light. I really felt like it was best for me to be in the dark. So I jump in bed and I got like 1 hour of sleep, and then my midwife called. So the midwife calls and says she wants me to go get checked at the clinic by my primary midwife so she can tell me, how far along I am, and confirm that my membrane's ruptured. I didn't really find that super necessary, because first of all, my membrane's ruptured. Like, it's not even a question, like, I knew that my water broke. And like, I wish they could have just taken my word for it and they didn't have to confirm it, like, but they had to confirm it. And I hadn't had any like major contractions, nothing consistent throughout the night. So I knew that I wouldn't be very dilated or far along progress wise. Like, I didn't want to get anything like, let's prevent getting like hands like up there while my membranes are ruptured, because that just raises risk of infection. And I don't want to go at the hospital. I really wanted my home birth. So I ended up kind of hesitating and pushing back a little bit on that. And by noon, um, they made me go in. So I went in to the clinic and I saw my primary midwife. Now, throughout my pregnancy, there were a lot of like boxes I had to tick to be able to have a home birth with this specific clinic. Baby had to be head down, it had to be only one baby, placenta had to be nice and far from the cervix. My hemoglobin had to be higher because I had low hemoglobin, and if I hemorrhaged, then it would be more dangerous. So we try to get I was on an iron supplement for a while, and my hemoglobin hadn't moved, so we were still waiting for like results on seeing that would go up because it was still low. There were all these little things that I had to like adjust to confirm that I was low risk and I could have a home birth, because they only do low risk home births. So we hadn't told anyone that we were doing a home birth because we didn't know if it was even possible and if we could even have one. And I felt like there wasn't enough information and education out there about home births, especially in my circle. Like family members and friends knew barely anything about home births. So for me, it wasn't worth it to just stress everyone out for something that we might not even end up having in the first place. And my husband and I also really weren't in a place where we were open to any kind of like just feedback or opinions that would make us feel careless, or like we didn't, we were taking a risk, when really we were super informed and educated, and we knew and trusted and felt that this was the best for us. So we kept it just between us for the entire pregnancy that we were considering a home birth. It would have been at the hospital any other situation, so that was kind of like the plan A/B. It was home birth or hospital, because our midwives do shared care with an OB at a hospital near our place. But throughout my pregnancy, during the meetings with my primary midwife, a lot of things were said that kind of made me feel like maybe they they didn't think that as a first-time mom I could do a home birth. I would be able to, or um and I'm not saying the intention, just like really important to know here, I don't think this midwife had bad intentions at all. I'm just sharing my perspective from the seat that I was in and the position that I was in, how things were perceived and how they started to sound over time. I'm gonna share how I feel like I was challenged and not believed, but this does not mean that that's the intention of the person. It's really just how I received information and how I felt. So this is my perspective, and that's all that it is. So during a lot of meetings, my primary midwife would tell me that the main reason why they transfer first-time moms to the hospital when they're attempting a home birth is because they can't cope. And at first, I felt like that was maybe being said to me because um, just to reassure me that the main reason they transfer is not because of a life or death emergency. It's really just because mom ends up not being able to cope and wants the drugs and goes to the hospital. So it's not because it's, anything alarming. But then it kept being said over and over and over and over and over and over again. And I don't know if that's just because they see so many moms and they forget who they said it to and they just repeat themselves to make sure that I know. But to me, it started sounding kind of like a broken record, and like it was trying to get me to consider just going to the hospital because I would end up not being able to cope and having to transfer. So my primary was the one constantly saying that most transfers with first-time moms is because they can't cope. And um, I guess because I felt like there was maybe skepticism that I could do a home birth as a first-time mom, because like it seems like the main situation with home births is like the first baby is going to be at the hospital and then mom knows what to expect and then she'll have a home birth with the second one. But I was going home birth first. So yeah, I felt like I was getting discouraged a little bit. It wasn't encouraging or reassuring hearing that at all. It was just I felt like maybe she was skeptical. And so when we got to the clinic and we saw that primary midwife, um, I was already a bit like on guard, just because I didn't feel like I needed to be, confirmed that my water broke, and I didn't feel like I needed to be checked because they kept telling me that there's a higher risk of infection 24 hours after your water breaks. And I was 12, like just over 12 hours after my water broke. So I didn't see just I wasn't I wasn't having contractions. There was no progress and I felt great. I felt fine. I was just tired. So I really didn't see the point in inserting something in my vagina to raise the risk of infection even more. and confirm that like I didn't want to be there. I wanted to be home in the dark and working on my progress and working on my contractions. And now I had to get in the car in the snowstorm, bright white all around, stalled the progress even more, just to go do two things that I thought were completely useless. But we did it. And when I got there, she checked me. And well, first thing, actually, when I got there, I thought she was going to swab my pad for amniotic fluid. So I had a giant, like, hospital pad full of fluid. And I just took it off and I put it on her counter because I thought that's how she was going to swab it. No, it turns out they swabbed me. But anyways, so I just put that giant pad full of fluid on her counter. And then she came in and she's like, oh, that's definitely fluid. Like, it's clear and, it's full of fluid. So, but she puts the swab inside of me, and then it goes like black right away. Like, it's definitely amniotic fluid. So of course my water broke. And then she checks me and she says I'm about 2 to 3 centimeters dilated, 70% effaced, which is actually more than I thought I was because nothing was going on. So then she offers to stretch and sweep, which is a like manual induction where they just go manually stretch and get the cervix away from the like uterine lining. Or anyways, it's invasive, it's internal. Apparently it's quite painful, and apparently it does not necessarily speed anything along. So I declined that right away. I did not want that personally. And then there were talks of a Cervidil, which is a little like tampon full of prostaglandins that's inserted behind the cervix. And it just helps your brain, you know, read all these hormones as like labor hormones and gets the work going. But again, contractions can be a lot more excruciating with a Cervidil. You can be really uncomfortable, but it doesn't necessarily speed the process up. So you're just making it harder for yourself. In some situations, this is not everyone, but I didn't want to serve a deal, so I said no. And then we talked about going to the hospital to get Pitocin, which is a synthetic form of oxytocin that speeds up the process and induces labor and contractions. But some babies don't react well to Pitocin. Moms don't react well to Pitocin. It's one of those interventions in the hospital that it opens the door to a lot more complications potentially happening. And at that point, I was completely fine. I had, no fever, nothing. I was just tired, no work. Like, I wasn't in labor and pain or anything. Like, I was being offered all these things when it was really useless for me. I just wanted to go back home, be in my bedroom in the dark, and let work progress. So I declined all of these things, and I felt like the midwife was a bit annoyed that I was declining everything, and I was really adamant about going home. So my doula had suggested I take the midwife's brew, which is a drink mix with castor oil that helps, like, basically it just induces like diarrhea, not for everyone, but for some. And then that's gonna like irritate the like the pelvic floor muscles and it's gonna just trick your brain into getting those contractions going, and it helps start the car, but you're going to be driving it. So it just helps start the car. And then whatever else happens after that is all you physiologically. So it was a natural way of, getting that car started. So I asked my midwife what she thought about that. And she told me that she did not recommend that at all, because if it gets, mom to have diarrhea, it could get the baby to poop. And if the baby poops inside, then it can be very dangerous. So I told my doula that, and my doula was actually kind of surprised because she sent me a bunch of pages from like the Association of Midwives of Ontario, like their Bible essentially, their book talking about how castor oil is a low risk and effective way of getting labor started. So the doula was just confused. She's like, how is a midwife not recommending that? It's like it's a midwife's recommendation. It's called a midwife's brew. Like, so she was just surprised. And because I wanted a water birth, like diarrhea and water birth didn't sound like a good time for me. So I was like, nope, that's fine. Like, if you're saying you don't recommend it because of that, then I won't take it. Then there's one thing that happened that, again, I just want to stress here. I don't think the midwife had bad intentions, but this specific thing that was said to me made me lose all trust. I told the midwife, can't I just go home, keep trying to get labor to just progress naturally? And if nothing happens by 24 hours, which is when you say there's a risk of infection, a higher risk of infection, I'll go into the hospital. I'll get an induction. But I want to wait till that 24-hour mark. And the midwife said, the thing is, at the 24-hour mark, it'll be 10:30 p.m. because your water broke last night at 10:30 p.m. And that's not the very ideal time to gather resources for a C-section. And I was really confused. I was like, what do you mean? And basically, it would be a bit harder to get like the doctor and everyone together for a C-section at that time. My head was spinning. I was like, wait a second, like, am I in an OB clinic or am I like, I went with midwifery care to avoid this kind of talk. I felt like I lost trust entirely after that statement because I did not understand why that was even said to me. First off, C-section was not part of the plan. Obviously, should there have been an emergency or anything, you know, anything alarming that would make me have to go get a C-section, I would have 100%. If anything was dangerous or if the baby was in distress or if something was wrong like with me, 100% I would have had a surgical birth or a hospital birth just to be there and be a bit, more secure if it was high risk. But I was low risk. There was no reason we were talking about C-section, especially in the same sentence as resources are a bit harder to gather at 10:30 at night. Like, are you telling me it's going to be, it's not ideal to page a doctor late in the evening to come do their job? Like if I go into the hospital at 10, like I did not understand what that meant, and I did not understand why that was even said to me. So obviously my reaction to that was, okay, well, if I need a C-section at 10:30 p.m., we're gonna get resources together. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, should I feel bad about that and, head in there for 1 p.m. instead so it's convenient for everyone? Like, this was the stuff that I didn't want to happen, and it happened to me, even if I went with midwifery care. So I was beyond annoyed after that, and I was like, I don't care. Like, I'm sorry, I don't care. We'll page the doctors and get resources together at 10:30 p.m. at night if I need a C-section. But right now, I don't need a C-section and everything's fine, so I'm going home. And so she's like, okay, and she's gonna take my temperature, and after that, we can go home. So she checks my temperature, and I had been monitoring my temperature at home, which I had told her. I'm like, I took my temperature like every hour since my water broke, and I don't have a fever, so I don't have an infection, or at least no sign of infection. And as she's taking my temperature, she says, sorry, my device is really slow. And then she asked me what my temperature was at home. And again, this is not saying that the intention there was to trick me, or there's like no reason for anyone to think that the intentions of the midwife were, bad. But this is important because it says a lot about how the statement that was made about the resources at 10:30 p.m. in the C-section really made me lose trust. When she asked me what my temperature was at, I purposely waited for her to give me her reading because I felt like whatever I said, they might just say, oh, mine is higher, you might have an infection, you have to go to the hospital. I felt like they just wanted me to go to the hospital, and I was thinking maybe it's because of the snowstorm, maybe they're short-staffed and they're not able to accommodate a home birth today. Whatever it is, this person seems to really want me to go to the hospital, or seems to think I'm going to end up in the hospital and I, might need a C-section. So that statement made me lose trust to the point where I didn't even trust a temperature reading. And Perhaps that's 100% my problem, and it's just me being too informed and hypervigilant because I only looked at, situations where the system made, decisions based on what was convenient for them and not best for mom. Like, I might have done this to myself. I'm not saying the midwife had bad intentions, but that's the place that I was in. And that's important because it's my birth. And that's how that day was going for me at that point. I was overtired and I really wanted to go home and keep naturally progressing and doing my thing. And I got really discouraged when I was at that clinic. So she gives me the reading and it was actually lower than what I had at home. So I'm like, oh, it's less. So even better, I don't have a fever at all. And she's like, okay. And then she says she's going to leave the room, let me get dressed. And she leaves the room. I get dressed and I kind of like just exchange a look with my husband because we were both kind of like having the same weird feeling about like the interaction. And that midwife was not even on call. So it's not like she would have had to come home and be at my birth anyways. So I was really just confused because I don't know, I felt the vibe was off. And when she came back into the room, I immediately saw on her face something was wrong. And she's like, I have bad news. When I took my glove off, I smelled chorioamnionitis. And I did not know what that was. So no matter how informed you are, there's still stuff that you don't know about that is going to come up. And so she says, chorioamnionitis is an infection of the amniotic fluid. It's super dangerous for the baby. It's dangerous for you. You need to go to the hospital right now. And I'm just in shock. And I look at my husband, and obviously, if there is anything that could be, potentially harm my child or me, we're going to the hospital. That was non-negotiable. So we're like, yeah, okay, perfect. We have hospital bags already prepared as like an in case. We're going to load them up and we're going to the hospital. And then she says that choreo has a very, very distinct smell. And she smelled it on her glove when she took it off. And she doesn't want to take a chance. She wants me to go to the hospital right now so that the midwife there and the OB there can like assess. So, and then she says, I'm sorry, you guys. I know you really wanted a home birth, but I guess it's, not happening. And again, because my guard was up, I felt that was suspicious as well because you're diagnosing me with something that sounds really dangerous based off of a smell. Like I didn't do blood work or anything. It's not confirmed. You're diagnosing me with something and you're ruling out the home birth 100%. And I haven't even left the little clinic yet. So I leave there in tears because now I'm like, I'm not having my home birth. I'm going to go to the hospital. Is the baby okay? Like the baby's health is on my mind. And I tell my doula that I have choreo and I'm going to the hospital. And then my doula tells me that she recently was at a birth where there was choreo and that it's a very, very strong, distinct smell. And we would have definitely smelled it in our home based on the amount of fluid that I lost when my water broke. So I'm like, no, there was no smell at all. I kept smelling my fluid and it was very clear. It smelled normal. Well, it smelled like nothing. And, there was no sign of infection. I don't have a fever. Everything's fine. But she smelled it on her glove. And so my doula explains that like the whole birth ward like smelled like it's a very strong smell. When there's choreo, it's not you don't doubt it. You don't need to send your client to the hospital for someone else to smell or to assess. Like it's very obvious that it's that. So I'm like, well, I guess she really knows then that that's what I have. But then I realized that I put a pad full of fluid, like heavy full of amniotic fluid on the counter in the room. And so my doula tells me, like, Brianna, if you had choreo, that entire office, the entire clinic would smell if you put your pad full of fluid on the counter. There would not be a doubt. It would not have been a whiff off of a glove. Like, choreo is that distinct of a smell. And she starts sending me a bunch of information on my phone on choreo, which it's so great to have a doula because of the information that you can get. And it's not information that's like, here's why you should believe me or do this my way. It's really just information so that you know both sides of everything, pros, cons, in general. And then you also know like what is maybe not in general, but could also happen. Like it's just a variety of information that helps you make an informed decision, which is so important. So she's sending me all this info. We get home, we pack our bags, and we head to the hospital. And in my mind, I'm not going back because there was a snowstorm. The hospital is like 35 minutes away from our house. I was avoiding going there even for a check, even for a Cervidil, or even for a stretch and sweep, because I was like, if they get me in there, I will not be going home. I had this feeling that like I'm gonna be already there. It's gonna be very easy for me to stay and for them to convince me that I have to stay, and I don't want to go there. But now it was about the baby's health and my health. So we flew there, and I was trying to stay positive. I was crying in the car, but I was like, at least the snow is so nice. Like it was a winter wonderland. That's how crazy the storm was. I'm like, at least the landscape is really nice. And we saw deer in the forest with like the trees full of snow, and it was so beautiful. And I'm like, at least we got to see this on the way in. We would not have seen this if we would have had a home birth. Just trying to stay as positive as possible. And so we get to the hospital, and I walk into the birth ward, and I see the midwife that I want at my birth. And as soon as she greets me, she's like, okay, Brianna, listen, we don't just like say it's choreo without knowing it's choreo. It's like it's a pretty big deal. So like we're not gonna tell you it's choreo until we know for sure that it's choreo. I'm gonna get you on the monitor. I'm gonna smell the pad. We're gonna see the baby's vitals and yours. But like she's like, I've been doing this for 21 years and doesn't seem like that's what it would be. She's like, I spoke with the OB too. Like we don't want to just say that's what you have. Like she was on the other end of like, that's probably not what's going on. So that was super relieving. And just seeing her was really relieving. So I get in the bed and they strap me up and they check the baby's vitals. That the baby's vitals are fine. I had 2 contractions while on that monitor, 10 minutes apart. And I just said like, oh, I'm having a contraction, sat back, took a few deep breaths, and I was like, okay, I'm back. And super manageable contractions, like nothing crazy. I still didn't feel like I was in labor at all. And so she says that I left my pad in the bathroom. Again, no smell. The OB, no smell. Like my vitals are fine, baby's vitals are fine. So they're like, you don't have choreo, which is great news. And I tell my doula, and she's like, yeah, okay, that makes more sense. So now we're in the hospital bed, and it's like, what do we do? Because now it's like 3, 4 in the afternoon. So we're approaching the evening, which is approaching the 24-hour mark. I was already checked by someone, which means something was inserted, which means the risk of infection is higher. I'm already at the hospital. There's a snowstorm. I'm 35 minutes away from home. I'm already there. What do we do? So they're talking about induction, and they're presenting all the same things that, the Cervidil and the Pitocin and all that. So I'm a hard no on Pitocin, but now I'm considering a Cervidil because we could just get things going to avoid getting past that 24-hour mark, because it sounds like risk of infection is a lot higher after 24 hours based on all the information I'm being given. So my husband and I talk about it, and we're like, yeah, Cervidil makes sense. And we spoke with the midwife, and we're like, we'll take a Cervidil and we'll go home. So it'll start my labor, and you can remove it if it's too uncomfortable, which was a good option for me. I thought like that's ideal. If it's too bad, I'll take it out. And yeah, we'll go home and I'll try the home birth. And if I can't, I'll transfer. But then the OB says, "Oh, I'm not prescribing a Cervidil if you don't come back to the hospital. Like you stay here if you take a Cervidil." So now if we take Cervidil, we are for sure having a hospital birth because the OB won't let me have a home birth if she prescribes that. So now I'm talking with my doula, talking with my husband, trying to figure out what we're going to do. And God bless my doula, who just tells me like, Brianna, you are literally right now sitting at the same place you were at home this morning when I checked in on you. You don't have a fever. You're doing fine. Your contractions aren't crazy. There's not much progression. Your water broke. It could progress naturally, could happen naturally. There's no reason why we need to induce you right now. You still have more than enough time before the 24-hour mark for something to happen, or at least for some progress to start. Why don't you go home and I'll meet you there and we'll do everything we can to get labor started naturally. And then she says, if you're already at the hospital, you feel safe, you want the Cervidil, and you just want to get it, get it started, I'm not like, that's perfectly fine. I support any decision that you feel is best for you. I'll come to the hospital, but you're the most prepared person I know for this home birth, and it's still very much an option for you. So, she was just trying to remind me, like, you have a whole vision for this birth that was kind of like erased and like painted in a different situation for no reason today. It literally, you just wasted time today for no reason that you could have been spending at home relaxing and being in your element and progressing your work. And you wasted all this time because of this choreo smell and this check and all this stuff. So she's like, why don't you just go back home and we'll do everything we can. And if at 24 hours, nothing's going on, we'll go in for an induction. So kind of the same thing I had told the first midwife. And I'm like, yes, that's what I wanted, that I'm still in that same position where I can have that. There's no risk right now. I'm still low risk. I'm going to go home. So we tell the midwife that I'm going home. And because of the vibe I had from the first midwife, I straight up asked the second one that was at the hospital, do you guys have the resources right now to accommodate a home birth tonight? Because I was like, there has to be a staffing issue or something. That's why she's kind of like sending me to the hospital. And now there's this big infection scare and all that. Like, so I asked her straight up, are you guys able to accommodate a home birth tonight? And she said, yeah, you're the only person right now that's like ruptured membranes. Like, you're my only person right now that I'm on standby for. Perfect. I'm going home. And as I walked out of the hospital, something really interesting again happened. Again, not saying that OB had bad intentions at all. I'm sure she was just trying to reassure me that that they were being proactive. But based on where I was sitting and the situation I was in after the day that I had, it sent my head spinning again. My husband and I are walking out of the birth ward, ready to go home after declining all the, interventions and inductions and saying no to everything, saying an empowered no to everything. And the OB goes, oh, Brianna, come here. So I walk over to her desk and she's sitting at a computer and she tells me, I just want you to know, I ordered all the narcotics for you on your chart. They're already all ordered. They're all there. And these are narcotics that like you can't get addicted to if you only take them once. Like all the pain stuff, it's all there and ready for you if you come back. So I say, okay, thank you. Like a weird thank you, because maybe the intention was to just say like, hey, we're being really proactive. You're the only person that this midwife is on standby for. We're getting everything ready in case you come back. You won't have to wait for anything. We'll be super efficient. Perhaps. But for me in that moment, it was one more person telling me, you're not going to be able to cope. You were here. We could have done this now. Now you're going to go back home. We'll see you later because you're going to be back here and you're going to want this medication. It just felt like one more person that was skeptical that I could do this. So I just turned to my midwife and I said, I'll see you later. And I walked out of the birth ward with my husband. And I was like, what the hell was that? Also, because there's people in my family that struggled with opioid addiction. So the thought that this person was just like, hey, by the way, all narcotics for you are right here and ready, without even knowing anything about my background. I had never been to this hospital before, never met this OB. I don't even know if she had a conversation with my midwife about my history or anything. Like, and not that it applies to me, but it could, it was just so strange. So I leave there, and the whole drive back, I was thinking, I can't believe the day that, like, all the hours I just wasted, that I could have been home in the dark in my bedroom, just like working on naturally getting labor to go. And I'm excited to get home because my doula is going to meet me and we're going to do all these things and I'm going to have my home birth. And at the same time, I'm like, am I being careless? I'm having all these thoughts of like, what if something happens and I was at the hospital and we could have just avoided all of that by staying there? All the little fears are creeping up. And I hadn't eaten at all. So my husband dropped me home and then got some food. And when he came back, we ate quick. And then I sent him to bed because he was also running on no sleep. And I was like, I'm gonna need you like at the top of your game later when this starts. Especially now that it seems like people don't think I can do this. Like I think it's gonna be bad. So like you need to go sleep. So I sent him up to go sleep and I'm doing the mile circuit that my doula sent me. So holding these really uncomfortable positions for 30 minutes and just miserable, like not comfortable positions at all. But at this point, I'll do anything I can. So it's like 5:30 p.m. and she shows up and she just gets to work. My doula makes me take these homeopathic like little capsules. She does acupressure with an oil on my feet. She gives me a lower back massage. She's diffusing this, I think it's clary sage everywhere in my house. Um, she's filming, she's taking pictures, she's doing a bunch of things that I'm not really paying attention to, but she's buzzing around and keeping busy. And then when I'm finished with doing the positions from the mile circuit, she says, we're gonna go for a walk. I was like, what? Like there's a snowstorm. We're going outside for a walk. Okay. And she's like, yeah, and you're gonna put your breast pump on. So I put my breast pump on, which was so uncomfortable. And we do 2 blocks in my neighborhood in the deep snow, just chatting. And she asked me if I'm having contractions, and I'm like, no. And I wish I'm saying yes, but I'm like, no. And then just like I just had cramping, like, like intestinal or like just an awkward cramp, but nothing coming and going. No surges, no waves, nothing. So finally, after the 2 blocks, we get home. She's like, now we're gonna turn on the lights and put on some music. And I'm like, what? In my head, I'm like, I've been like in the dark, in the quiet with my headphones and like how is this gonna help? Like I don't think that's what works for me, but I obviously don't know what works for me because nothing's working. So we go in, we put on some upbeat music and turn on all the lights. And then we have a big staircase in our house and she's like, we're gonna do like circuits up and down the stairs. So I'm sideways going up, going down, going up, going down, going up, going down so many times. But she's doing it with me and she's encouraging me, but I'm like holding back tears because time is going by and I'm not feeling anything. There's nothing going on. Nothing significant telling me that any of this is working. I'm just really uncomfortable at that point because everything hurts. Going up the stairs hurts, walking outside hurt, the mile circuit positions hurt, everything hurt except the massage she gave me, which I wish I wish it would have been just that. So my husband wakes up and comes down the stairs and now it's like 7:30 p.m. And the midwife had said at 9 I had to call her if she was going to call me, and if there was no progress, I was going in for an induction. So I'm like 2 hours, less than 2 hours away from having to go in. And it's impossible in my head that anything's going to start in 2 hours that's going to be significant enough for them to want me to stay home or to agree for me to stay home. But I still don't have a fever or any sign of infection, which is great and reassuring, but I'm just so defeated at that point. So my husband wakes up and I'm on my gym ball and I'm crying because I gave up. I was like, you know what? It's approaching 8. In an hour, I have to call her and say, well, I'm coming in. Like they all thought I was gonna go in. And I'm just giving up on my vision. I'm giving up on everything. I just was really low, low vibe. And I was gonna tell my doula and my husband to just pack up. We were going to the hospital. Like I wasn't gonna stay home any longer. Who am I kidding? Like, let's just go in. And my doula says, are you really a hard no on the midwife's brew with a castor oil? And she tells me that the first birth she ever attended, waters were ruptured first, like me, stalled progress, nothing going on for so long. Finally, at like over 30 hours, I think, took the castor oil drink and had the baby like 4 hours later. I'm like, wow, that's a beautiful story. I have I don't think that's going to happen for me. And knowing that it's my first birth and it's going to be long, I'm also giving up on my baby being born on the 4th. So I don't think that my baby is going to share her birthday or his birthday with my mother-in-law. And just all these things are in my mind, and I'm like, oh, my expectations, you know, like nothing's gonna happen the way that I thought it was gonna happen. Um, and I tell her, you know, the castor oil drink, like I could take it, but like, what if, you know, the baby poops inside of me? And she's like, you know what? Like meconium happens. Like shit happens. Babies poop inside all the time without castor oil. And yes, they're monitored a bit closer when the baby comes out and they see there's meconium in the fluid, but like it's not like this is something recommended in the midwife's book, essentially. Like this is not like it's not something that's dangerous. And you know, if there's meconium, we'll deal with that then. But she's like, the worst case scenario is you're gonna have diarrhea and you're not gonna go into labor. So she's like, are you willing to risk diarrhea for the best case scenario, which is like you're not gonna have diarrhea and you'll go into labor? Because that's also an option. And I was like, you know what? At this point, like, yeah, I'll take it. I'll drink the thing. Let's just try it. But we didn't have the ingredients, so we had to send my husband out to go get the ingredients. And when he was back making the drink, it was 8:20, 40 minutes away from having to call the midwife. And I've given up now more than ever. And even while they're blending it, I'm thinking of going to tell them, like, you guys just stop. I know we just spent this money on these ingredients, but let's just go. But I got into the kitchen and it was ready and it was in a shaker in front of me, and I just sat down and I drank it. And I was so defeated, like I can't even describe how I felt because I had worked so hard for this, and I had, you know, I had this vision that I put so much faith and belief in because I knew my postpartum season was going to be affected by the kind of birth that I had. As a postpartum doula, I've seen that hospital births versus home births, how moms cope in the postpartum season. And it was already, it felt like it was already a big waste of time. And I knew that this was going to affect me mentally postpartum. So I was just very defeated. And whatever, it's 8:30 and I drink the thing. And we're 30 minutes away from my midwife calling. And I go sit on my gym ball after drinking it. And I just start to like move around, and I'm chatting with my doula and my husband, and I have a contraction, which is great. Oh, I'm having a contraction. Time it. A little stronger than the other ones were. But then I had one right away, like not long after. And I was like, wait, déjà, like already? Time it. So we're timing it. And so that started at 8:30 p.m. At 9 p.m., the midwife called, and I was 3 minutes apart. So that's 30 minutes. I was on my way upstairs to go to the bathroom because I felt like I had to run to the washroom. And my midwife's talking to me on the phone, and I'm like, oh, just a second, I'm having a contraction. And then, oh, breathing through it, picking up the phone. Okay, I'm back. And then I'm trying to go up the stairs, and then, stop. Again, another contraction, go up the stairs. It felt so long to go up those stairs. And then finally got to the bathroom, and no diarrhea from the castor oil, just a super healthy bowel movement, which was amazing because it prevented me from having a bowel movement during labor, which was something I was stressed about. So I just, you know, cleansed myself right before, and it ended up being amazing. Like I just felt better, and there was no like scary diarrhea scenario like I was being told with the castor oil. So now my midwife is asking me, do you want me to come check you? And I'm like, well, I don't want to be checked because this just started 30 minutes ago. I'm probably like not even half a centimeter more dilated than I was. But like these are really close together, and they're very like I can't talk through them. Like I have to really focus and breathe because the pressure and the cramping is really intense. And she's asking me like, she's telling me it sounds like you're in, you know, legit labor, like your contractions, the way they're sounding and how long. She's like, I'm timing them on the phone when you tell me, give me a second. She's like, you're pretty close apart. Like, do you want me to come? So she keeps asking me if I want her to come. And I'm like, I don't know. This is the first time I'm doing this. Like, you tell me if you should come. Like, I wasn't in a position to make decisions, which is another thing. That's why it's so important to have people around you who know your choices and can advocate for you, because during labor is not the time to ask you corporate decision making. Like there needs to be people around you who know your birth plan from start to finish and can advocate for you. So important. because I couldn't make a decision. So I was just like, oh my God, like stop asking me. You decide. You're the provider. You're the midwife. What are you hearing? You tell me. She was still asking me to make the decision. So I said, you know what? Make your way over slowly. That's what I said. I'm like, slowly make your way over. No rush. This is probably going to go on for hours on end. Probably going to have this baby tomorrow afternoon. So it's 9 p.m., just after 9 p.m. now. Make your way over slowly. She's like, okay, I'll make my way over slowly. Get off the phone with my midwife. I make them remove the TENS machine because that was not helping me. And I want to go in the shower. Luckily, my gym ball fit in my shower. So we rolled in the gym ball and I was on all fours in the shower with my head on the gym ball with the hot water pouring on my lower back. And that felt amazing. And through every contraction, I was just rocking around on my gym ball. Like movement was so important to get through those surges. But in my head, I had like all my little, hypnobirthing tricks and affirmations and my visualizations. I was thinking of the flower blooming and the blue ribbons and the thinning and all of that, like really in my element, doing my work in my head. And I felt like it was working well because some contractions I could just breathe through quietly. And then the next one, I would completely forget all of my stuff and just roar through them and then go back to a place where it was like peaceful and calm and then roar through the next one. Like every contraction was different, but I felt like I was doing really good work. Then I had to change positions because I was no longer comfortable on my knees. So I sat on my gym ball in the shower with the hot water pouring on my belly. And I could like get water in my hands and pour it over my face. And for some reason, that's what I needed. That's what I wanted. I had combs, one comb that I could like squish into my palm. I would say that was helpful because I kept it, I guess, but like nothing significant enough for me to be like, oh my God, the comb was helpful for me personally. The water was super helpful. And the moving, standing still during a surge was not natural for me. I had to move through them. And my doula was coaching me when I would stop, like, hey, keep moving and keep, she was helping me stay in my flow and in my motion. It felt like 2 minutes went by, and then I saw my midwife from through the shower door, like on the floor with my cat. And I was like, is that my midwife playing with the cat? And my husband's like, yeah. So I waved at her through the shower door, like, hi, you're here. And I was like, just so excited because I was having a baby. And she's like waving back and she comes in to check the fetal heart rate. Baby's heart rate is great. She's like, do you want me to check you? And I'm like, not right now because I was having really long contractions that were really close together. And I felt like I was doing good managing through them. But if I was going to get checked and be told like, you're at a 5, it would have really like disappointed me. So I didn't want to get checked. I stayed in there a bit longer. And from my midwife's notes, actually right here, she arrived at 10:15. So I had been at least an hour in that shower working through contractions. So at 10:15, she arrived, then blood pressure, heart rate, she checked everything. Everything was fine. I felt like the heat in the shower was making me nauseous. So I was like, oh, I think I need to get out of the shower. But then I got out of the shower and standing up, I was nauseous. So I was like, I need the little trash can. So they brought the little trash can. I went in my bedroom and I vomited like projectile 3 shots in the poubelle, like in the little trash can. And it just felt amazing. Like it felt so good. But after that happened, my contractions changed. It was no longer cramping belly, it was lower body pressure going down. I felt the transition. I felt my body transition. And from my midwife's perspective, seeing me throw up, she was like, that's a sign she's in transition. But I've been here like 30 minutes. Like she can't, that's unlikely. Like, is this for real? And then she saw me go to the washroom and she asked my husband, what's going on? Did she have to pee? And he's like, no, she said she had pressure. She thinks she has to have a bowel movement. And she's like, I need to check her now. Like, cause she just threw up and now she feels pressure. Like it seemed like she's in transition. I need to check her. And I was laboring on the toilet, but I realized like, I don't have to poop. Like I need to push. Like that's what's going on right now. So I go back into my room and I lay on my bed and the midwife's like, I'm checking you now. So she checks me and I'm like, but what if I'm like at a 6 or like a 7? Like, I don't want to know if it's not, if it's not hot. And she's just telling me like, trust me, like just I need to check you. And then she checks me and she starts to laugh. And I'm like, what? And she says, you're like a 9.5. Like this, the head is right there. Like this baby's coming. And I'm like, oh my God, someone go fill the birth pool downstairs that we inflated because I'm having this baby now. And the midwife's like, no, no, Brianna, no time. We don't have time to fill that birth pool. And then I just panicked a little bit because I really wanted to be in water. My whole pregnancy, I was doing birth visualizations where I would get really relaxed. And for me, that's in the bath. So I'd get a hot bubble bath and I would lay in my bath on my side, roll up a little towel, put it under my head and lay on the side of the bath. And then I would visualize my whole birth in my head and being underwater submerged and being on my side and pushing the baby out. For literally 10 months of pregnancy, from the beginning, when I started doing visualizations, that's what I was visualizing, being in water. So when they said there's no time to fill the birth pool, I was like, I'm not having this baby like on all fours, dry in my bed. Like I need to be in water. So I pointed at the bath in my bathroom from my master bedroom and I said, we're filling that tub. Like, can I birth in that tub? And the midwife's like, yeah, sure. Well, it's not super spacious, but we'll make it work. Perfect. My husband starts to fill the tub, and then I start having pushing contractions. And the way that it happened for me, if I did nothing at all, my body would have pushed. If I helped it or didn't, it was happening. Um, there was an urge to push. My body knew exactly what it was doing, and I was a spectator essentially. My body was like physiologically giving birth. I was a spectator. I was either going to make it harder for myself by being stressed and by clenching and not breathing, or I was going to make it easier on myself by breathing down and helping my body do its job, because this was happening regardless if I was participating or not. So my doula was coaching me on how to breathe it down and like send that pressure down because I was just groaning it out. So she helped me really like move all that pressure from, instead of outside, like from inside. And I was like, I can't do it. I can't figure it out. And then when I finally did figure it out, I got in a really nice groove. And she was putting her hand on my lower back, like at my rhombus. And she was telling me with every contraction, push back into my hand. And that was heaven. Like 40% of the intense pressure I was feeling was relieved by just that counter pressure on my lower back. So doulas, midwives, partners, birth coaches, whoever you are, moms, give that a try if you're on all fours. You're gonna want to give that a try if you're looking for comfort measures, because that was the thing that I can advocate for the most. It was so helpful for me. Might not be helpful for someone else having maybe back labor or a sunny side up baby, but in my situation, that was so helpful. One note, when my midwife did check me and I was on my back, I had a contraction right after she checked me. And that, I will say, was the one contraction that was excruciatingly painful. Every other contraction I had was like a lot of pressure, sensory overload for sure, but I wouldn't say it was pain. The contraction on my back was pain on my lower back. I felt like I had a big pinched nerve. It felt like fire, like crunching all of my lower back with the gravity, like everything being on my back. That contraction on my back was so horrible. And I told my doula, like, I can be on my back. And she's like, nope, get on all fours. Like, let's change this up. Like, you don't want to be on your back. Which now, thinking about it, blows my mind that this is how most women give birth, because it's just more convenient for the doctor and they have a better view of everything. But oh my God, did it not feel natural? And not just that, but there was no help from gravity and no help from my body moving. Like I could be on all fours and have a contraction and push back into my hands, into my doula's hand on my lower back, and help that head and that pressure go down. There was a flow there that felt so natural and felt productive, whereas being on my back, I felt trapped. And I never would have thought that it was this much of a contrast between other positions and that one, because that one is the main one, which blows my mind. But if you can get up and move around and try to find the position that works for you, please give yourself that, at least advocate for yourself for that, because there's not only one way. After a bunch of contractions like that, I was getting impatient with the bath filling. I was like, my God, this bath is taking so long to fill. I was like, what's going on with the water? Like, I fill this bath all the time. It doesn't take that long, but I just had no perception of time. Like, it had been 2 minutes, but I had, 4 or 5 contractions in 2 minutes. So I'm feeling like it's long, but it's really not. And finally, the bath was full enough. So I went in the bath at just after 11:15. I started pushing at 11, and just after 11:15, I went in the bath. And we were trying to find a position for me to get comfortable. And that's not the bath I was planning to give birth in. So I was trying to figure it out, and the head started coming out. So when I felt the head, I was just like on another planet. Like I was in another state, but I was just feeling so euphoric. And I grabbed my husband's hand and I put it there. I didn't even ask him, like, do you want to feel the head, honey? No, I was like, feel this. Like, this is so insane. Like, oh my God, we're doing this. And he was just so overwhelmed with emotion. And we were like, oh my God, like this is happening. And I was so focused on the work that I was doing that I kind of forgot there was a baby at the end. So when I felt the head, I was like, oh my God, like this is what I'm doing right now. Like, this is not for nothing. There's a baby coming out. And so I was trying to find a position and like a turning around, and like you have a huge head trying to come out. So it was very uncomfortable to try to like maneuver on my knees and find a position. And then my midwife says, how about you lay on your side? And I'm like, okay. So I lay down on my side, and then my head is on the side of the bath, and I look at my husband and I'm like, I need a pillow here, and or a towel. And there were no more towels because we were using them all for the water and the fluids and stuff. So he gives me his sweatshirt and I roll it up and I put it there. And then I realized that I just found myself in the position that I had been in for every visualization of my home birth since I got pregnant. And it makes me emotional talking about it. But I laid there and I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been preparing for so long. And I'm here now. And, I almost wasn't going to be here. And I'm here and I'm doing it. And I'm exactly where I felt so safe, like practicing in my head for so long. And when I laid on my side, the backup doula walked in. So there's always one main doula and a backup one at a birth. One focuses on mom and one focuses on the baby. So based on my midwife's notes, the backup doula arrived at 11:30. And at 11:32, they did a fetal heart rate check, which was still great. So at 11:30, I like wave at this midwife, sorry, the backup midwife that I had never met. And I'm in the bath on my side and I'm pushing with every contraction. And then with one of the contractions, I looked at my husband and I said, the next one, I'm pushing this baby out. In hindsight, I probably should have taken 4 or 5 more contractions to slowly breathe that head out. It would have probably avoided tearing. And I knew that. I was so educated on the matter. But in that moment, I was just like, I want to meet my baby. And I was overwhelmed with emotion and love, and just, with my childhood and the stories of my ancestors and the women in my family, I thought birth was going to bring a lot of stuff up for me. I thought it was going to be an emotional mess. And it was just so empowering. I did not once felt scared. I felt zero fear. I didn't once have like something creep up that was, traumatic, or like it was just so beautiful and empowering. And I just wanted that baby out. And I looked at my husband and I'm like, the next one. And then when that surge came, I pushed with everything I had. And you'll hear on the video at the end my last primal roar that got the baby out. And so the head came out and the cord was around the neck. So the midwife just said, like, we'll just wait, don't push. But then fetal ejection reflex, like the baby just flew out without me even doing anything. So the body and everything came out. And she took the baby and she took the cord like over the neck and got the baby out of the water. And then my husband saw the sex of the baby and he looked at me and I wasn't sure what I saw, but I saw the absence of things. So I was like, is it a girl? And he nodded. And it's a girl. Like you'll hear me like high pitched squeal crying, like it's a girl. I couldn't believe it because everyone thought it was a boy. A few people thought it was a girl, but most people thought it was a boy. And I was crying and we were just so happy. And I couldn't believe I had just, given birth to my first baby at 11:41 on December 4th. So she did make it on her grandma's birthday. And my labor started just before 9 p.m. And 2 hours and 41 minutes later, my baby was in my arms, which is insane for a first-time mom. And my midwife kept coming to see me to say, like, I just want you to know, like, it's incredible what you just did. And you can give all the credit to the castor oil that you want, but physiologically speaking, this was all you. Like, it might have started the car, but you drove that car. Like, your body was ready to drive that car. And she was just making sure that I gave myself the credit and I wasn't giving credit to a bunch of other things. And that was really, really nice to hear the midwife say that to me after feeling like maybe some midwives thought that I couldn't do this. Because I freaking did. And I did it fast and furious. And I remember thinking during labor that, no wonder I was challenged. No wonder I wasn't believed and I was made to feel like maybe no wonder I was sent to the hospital. And, obviously that had to happen to me because I've been advocating for moms to advocate for themselves for a year. I've been researching this and telling moms to advocate for themselves for a year. But who am I to tell moms to do that if I never had to do it for myself in birth and in a situation where you're so vulnerable? I hadn't experienced that. And I knew this was my calling, and what I'm doing now is my calling, this job that I'm doing of writing and empowering moms in their matrescence. And I couldn't do that without having gone through challenges and doubt and fears. And, I can watch all the documentaries about, the business of hospitals and birth and the system. But if I never had an experience where, a fear of infection was brought up and I had to go to the hospital and make that decision and advocate for myself and say an empowered no and believe in my vision, then who am I to tell moms to do that? So at the end, I was thinking, like, of course this happened the way that it did. I've never had, a fire inside of me as strong as I do now, with birth and motherhood and just womanhood in general. I think this was all for me, 100% for me. And I can see that now. And I saw it during labor and I was excited to come out the other side and be like, I went through this and I did it myself and I said no, and you can too. And you can inform and educate yourself and have the birth that you want. It doesn't have to be, the way that everyone else says that it should be. The bigger challenge that came was after birth. My husband and I were concerned that I would hemorrhage at home. My mother had a pretty significant hemorrhage with her first birth. And I don't, not that it was hereditary or anything, but it was just a concern that we had, and my hemoglobin having been so low. That was a bit more of a concern, but we knew that we got my hemoglobin higher with the iron supplement. It was still just a concern. My main fear was that I would hemorrhage and I would have to be transferred to the hospital. And then my husband would be stuck coming home to the crime scene and have to clean everything up himself and relive the trauma and not know if I'm okay. And, it was putting him through that. Because we had been presented by my primary midwife all of the emergency situations that could arise. And a hemorrhage was one of them where I would have to be transferred. And I hemorrhaged. So when I had my baby in my arms, I'm like completely focused on my baby with my husband, and there's like this pool of blood filling around me in the bath, and it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until the midwife is like, you need to get out of the bath. But I wasn't seeing it because I was just so focused on my baby. But I remember having to get up and I couldn't see my legs because the water was black, like completely black. I couldn't see my legs through the water. So I got up and I got out of the bath and they were all holding me and I was fine. But I could tell that there was a bit of concern in their face. And I sat down on the birth stool and she's like, if you have a contraction, like the placenta is going to come out. But I didn't have any contraction. So she asked me to push a little bit. So I just pushed a bit and the placenta was right there. Like it came right out. But after the placenta came out, um, I'll say buckets of blood came out because she had like a clear plastic bucket under me. And I said, is this normal? And they just like gave the baby to my husband. And I was seeing all this blood and the bath. And I was starting to see in their faces looking at each other that like maybe it wasn't normal. So I had an oxytocin injection in my thigh. And then they put like an adult diaper on me and I went to bed. Um, and they were feeling where my uterus was, and every time they were pressing on my belly, I could feel the blood shooting out in my adult diaper. So I was like, stop pushing because I keep feeling those like jets of fluid, which was blood coming out. And so my midwife assessed me, she stitched me up, which they do at home. And they never said hemorrhage. They never said the H word while they were managing it at home. Only days later, when one of the midwives did a follow-up appointment at my house, did she say, like, you hemorrhaged. And then she spoke about, postpartum depression and risks of postpartum depression being higher with a hemorrhage and all that. But that was later. Like in the management of it all, everyone stayed calm. No one used big, scary words. It was just like, let's assess. And there were scary, gigantic clots coming out of me that were definitely terrifying to see. But I was just in this state of calm in my bed with my husband and my baby. And the euphoria never went away. The euphoria always overpowered anything else that was going on. I didn't really know I was hemorrhaging. Everyone did, but I was just happy as a clam. And they were like, okay, you need to stand and go to the washroom. And they were trying to see if I would feel faint. And I got up and I walked to the washroom and I'm like, I'm fine. But based on what they were seeing, I was not. So I went to the washroom and I pulled my adult diaper down and there's like grapefruit size clots in there. And I'm like, is this normal? And they're like, we're going to keep assessing, like one hour at a time. And while I'm in bed with my husband and my baby just bonding and getting breastfeeding started, um, my doula is bringing me food and fluids to replenish. They're cleaning up. They disinfected the bath. They cleaned up the bathroom. They started laundry. They scrubbed blood out of my carpet. The next morning, you could not tell that someone had given birth in my home. Like they were so efficient at cleaning everything up and getting everything organized. I woke up the next day. I had a Perry bottle with water in it next to my toilet. I had a fresh, brand new bag of pads next to my pads. Like everything was just there for me. They catered to me and my well-being so, so well. That was the best part of like the doula midwife care team at home. It's how the amazing care that they had for me and my husband and my pets and the baby and just everything in general was really amazing. And I think that's what helped me stay so calm. I don't know that I would have been this calm in a hospital. I don't know how it would have ended up happening in a hospital, but that I just kept that same state of calm that everyone had. And there was never anything alarming or rushed or scary. Every time my midwife checked my vitals, they were fine. And based on the blood she was seeing, my vitals should not have been fine. Like she couldn't believe my heart rate was so stable and my blood pressure was so stable. But I think my body was just really fighting to keep me at home with my baby. And it was like, I'm sure my heart was like, you're losing a lot of blood right now, but I'm gonna work as hard as I can to keep you here at home with your babe and your husband. And by like 4 in the morning, I still had clots. So the midwife was like, okay, I need to call and get a bit more, like I need to call and find other advice from other providers. So she called a few people. She came back in my room and she said that she was gonna, last resort, she was gonna give me a pill, 1 orally and 3 rectally. And she said, I'm gonna sleep on your couch for an hour, and in an hour, if you're still clotting like you are right now, you're transferring into the hospital. And so I said, okay, and I'm gonna try to sleep and rest. Like I really didn't want to go to the hospital. For me and my husband, having had a home birth, like putting our newborn in a car seat and driving it somewhere was so unnatural. Like, they're so tiny. Like even the first time we had to leave the house, like 3, 4 days after she was born, putting her in the car seat, like she was all like, it was just not natural. But yet that's everyone who has, who gives birth in a hospital end up putting their baby in a car seat, bringing it home. But for us, having given birth at home, like now taking the baby out of the home felt so unnatural. And I feel like that's how it should be. Like I feel like, first of all, going into labor and active labor and having big contractions, the last place I want to be is tied in a vehicle. I don't want to be driving anywhere. I want to stay home. So, and I think that's why home birth was so appealing to me, because getting in the car to drive somewhere would just not work for me. Um, unless obviously there's a life or death emergency or it's high risk situation, of course. But if I'm low risk and everything's going well, I don't want to get into a car. And same thing with the baby, unless there's like a risk or a situation that we have to go get assessed, which is what happened 4 days after the birth. It was just for an appointment thing. Um, it was unnatural to just put her in the car seat and bring her to the hospital. So I really wanted to stay home. So I told my midwife, like, all right, you go on the couch and I'm gonna get to sleep right now. So I laid down, but I just shivered for an hour. And when I say shivered, I mean my whole body. Our king bed was vibrating. Like my teeth were clattering, but it wasn't even about the teeth. It was legs, feet, toes. Everything was shivering for a solid hour. And I did not get to sleep, but in hindsight, everything I know about nervous system regulation, how your body processes trauma, and of course, I was hemorrhaging and I tore, so there was trauma. Um, the way body processes trauma and the way the nervous system regulates trauma, this is amazing that it happened, the shivering for an hour. And I give a lot of credit to my clear mind postpartum to that hour of shivering post-birth. Um, And when my midwife came up an hour later, I went to the washroom and I pulled my adult diaper down and there were no clots. So she felt comfortable leaving and she came back the next morning, like, which was literally 5 hours later or 4 hours later. Um, but yeah, I was able to stay home. And we did like the 5 days in bed, 5 days on bed, 5 days around the bed. We tried to stay, like, I literally lived in my bed for a good while before I started going downstairs, except when I had to go to that appointment there with the baby. It was the first time I left home, and the last for a while after that too. And yeah, that's how it happened. That fast on December 4th, 11:41 p.m. Um, and in hindsight, I would not have had that birth without my doula, Karine, and I would not have advocated for myself as well if she wasn't there. And I think that says so much about, women supporting women and having those sisters there with you. When my baby was born, babies get, you don't have to, but some babies will get vitamin K shots after birth. And every place has a different time of how long after the baby is born that injection has to be given. And my midwife's protocol was 2 hours. And so the baby was getting measured and weighed and all the things, and she was mad. She was cold. She didn't want to be measured. She just wanted to be on me. And she had started breastfeeding, so she had that comfort, and then she was taken away. And I was like, I have a picture of that moment when the midwife is weighing my baby, and I look like I'm a tiger. I look like a mom lion, and like just wanting to kill the person who's making my baby so uncomfortable. I look so on alert in that picture because she was screaming and I just wanted her back. And the midwife kind of said like, well, the baby already is mad. She already hates me, so I'm just going to give that injection now. And I said, no, I want her back on my chest. I want her calm down. I want to soothe her, and then the injection can be given. And there was pushback. The midwife was like, she's already here, and I need to give this injection 2 hours after birth, and we're going on an hour 55. So like you'd have 5 minutes to soothe her. And my doula stepped in and said, that's plenty of time for her to soothe her. She wants her baby on her chest. She can definitely have her baby at her breast for that injection. And my baby was given to me, and I put her on my chest, and she immediately calmed down and stopped crying. And I exposed a little leg when she was calm. The midwife came, gave the injection. Baby felt the injection, screamed, got my breast in her mouth, and went calm right away. I was able to soothe her from that right away. And I don't know that having received the pushback in the position that I was in, would I have pushed back even more to say, no, this is what I want, bring her to me now. But my doula was there to do that. So again, even post-birth, advocating for me and my birth plan and what I wanted, because I told her I wanted my baby at my breast for that injection. And it's just things like that in hindsight, this would not have gone the way it did without my birth doula. And it is an investment. You pay for a birth doula, and depending on where you live, it can be pricey, but it's by far the best investment I've ever made. It's the best money I've ever spent. And my belief on money being energy and wanting to be generated for the greater good, like there's no business I would rather support right now in the time that we live in than the business of a mom who has a family, who is a birth worker, and who does this kind of work, because this is where all issues can be healed around the world. It's reconnecting that birth story, reconnecting those family units, healing some childhoods, like show me someone who is full of hatred and who's doing horrible things, and I will show you a traumatic childhood. Like the home from birth is where we can do work that transcends generations and will really actually create positive change. And even though there's like attacks on family systems right now, we're working to pay other people to raise our kids, and we're doing, we're still having these births that are disconnecting moms from their babies and their bodies. And there's all these situations that don't promote that, unity and connection and attachment from the get-go. People who work in those businesses trying to get that back and just bringing that kind of holistic birth experience back into our culture are godsend, and I really would invest in that over anything else. So think about it. It's an investment you're doing for you. It's an investment you're doing for your partner. It's an investment you're doing for your baby. It's an investment you're doing for your postpartum season. It can be it can be the fine line between a really dark postpartum time and one with light and one with hope and one with flowers. So I highly recommend investing in a birth doula. My husband, who was not really sure why we would even need a birth doula in the first place and was like, what is she going to do that I can do? Now is like, I would never do this again with my birth doula. I think everyone should have one at their birth. Like, obviously, they're not all like Karine, but if you get a Karine, like that, your experience is going to be so much better. And she makes me a better doula and a better mom and a better mentor and a better person just by having showed up for me the way she did. So huge shout out to Karine, who 1 month postpartum, I can still message with questions and thoughts, and I can still unpack anything I need to unpack with her, and she'll listen. Surround yourself with women like that after birth. It's so, so important. I will share some little snippets of the birth video that she surprised me with. I didn't even know that she was making this for me, which was the most beautiful gift I've ever received, because my husband and I are able to look back and relive those intense emotions together. I'm not going to share it all. I'm going to keep some for me. but I will share, the final push and the final primal scream that got my daughter into the world. If you have any questions, you can always email me or DM me on Instagram or from the email box on my website. There's so much cool stuff coming and opportunities presenting themselves since I've given birth. It's a newfound purpose, and I think Esmé brought to my life much more than just her amazing little soul and her amazing self. I am literally fully present, available, and at your service, mama or pre-parenting, person, whoever you are and wherever you are. The experience that I had and the postpartum experience I'm currently living through right now tells me how it doesn't have to be all bad and traumatic and dark and difficult. It's hard to believe. Some days I'm still waiting for it to get so hard and to get really like brutal. I'm like I'm waiting for it to happen because that's all I've heard my whole life. But perhaps all the work I've been doing has really amounted to this time and just shows me that you can have a really positive experience. And even if it's not positive or there's trauma, you can have a beautiful postpartum season. It doesn't have to be all bad. It doesn't have to be all difficult and all hard. People take courses and certifications for literally everything. They go skydiving, they take a course before. People take specializations. There's constant refreshers at work. People invest in their education for so many things, but we go blindly into parenting because that's just how it is. And there isn't that much support out there or encouragement of getting educated on the matter and prepared on the matter. There's so many people that go into parenting never having even looked at their own childhood wounds, which will all come out during parenting. And they'll go into parenting with partners that they've never even resolved communication with, which is, first base, first level, like basic stuff. And that's going to cause so many issues during your postpartum season. Like we go in it blindly, and I'm the result of blind people having kids in the middle of alcoholism and in the debris of their wounds and in the aftermath of sexual abuse and physical abuse and verbal abuse, and everything was just transferred downstream to us. And so I promised myself that if I was to become a mom, I would end all of these cycles and these patterns. And to do that, I had to do a lot of work and therapy, and I studied journalism to be better at researching all this stuff and be better at starting conversations and interviewing and asking questions and finding sources and writing about it to inspire and educate. And I really believe that that's why I'm having the experience that I'm having, and I'm literally nobody. So if I can do this, anyone can. Anyone can give themselves the gift of a beautiful birth that they envision and a postpartum season that is bright and colorful. Not to say there's not going to be hard days. I had my darkest night, but that is like majority of the time beautiful, as it should be for you. You deserve that. It's not just, my situation was bad because that's just how it was for me. No, it's not. It doesn't have to be. And you deserve literally the best postpartum time because that's going to impact you and your kid going down the road. And our work relies on attachment, secure attachment, love, connection, unity, healthy relationships, gentle parenting. I don't even like saying gentle parenting. It's just parenting. It's just parenting. There's no such thing as gentle parenting. It should just be called parenting. But I guess that parenting is now considered aggressive parenting, so we have to specify that there's a gentle way of doing it. You know, we need to really reverse these things and get back to taking care of our families and our community and our mothers, especially that should be first class citizens, because that's where the future lies. If we can fix the home and if we can repair the childhood home, we can solve, I would argue, most of the issues going on in the world right now. So that's my little final rant. Enjoy the little video. Thank you for listening. Any questions, reach out. Any feedback, reach out. And if you want support or information, um, I'm currently on mat leave, but I have amazing resources and people I can refer you to. And I'm also semi-available, so I can support you to the best of my ability. So thank you and enjoy this video of the night that I gave birth to my beautiful daughter, Esmé.